Welcome back, everyone. Toybiz here, and I am back yet again to give you guys another retro shiz look back at the past. And today we're going to be talking about the very first wave of the original Toybiz Marvel Legends series. You know what? We need to fix this a little. There we go. That's more like it. Yeah, all the way back to 2002. 20 years. And with the 20-year anniversary of the new wave of Marvel Legends coming soon, I thought it would be a lot of fun to look back on these original set of figures that were very game-changing to the action figures that you hold in your hands to this very day. So it all kind of starts around 2002, right? Walking to Toys R Us. Now, around this time, I was thoroughly into Spawn. Just come off of Toybiz's, we'll say, Spider-Man the Animated Series. Kind of sort of dabbled in Spider-Man classics. You know, back then, younger days, 15, 16 years old, you have to work. You got to start using your own money. You got to pay for stuff. School is a thing. Hanging out with the ladies, that's a thing. And toys, well, they kind of have to take a back seat once in a while. But lo and behold, on one of my trips to Toys R Us, trying to find some new Spawn figures, if I remember correctly. But I definitely remember the store employee, they had a bunch of boxes out in the aisle, and they were putting out these new Marvel Legends figures. And, you know, of course, like any new figures on a shelf, you're like, oh, okay, you wander over, you pick one up. The guy says to me, oh yeah, these are the new things. These are new. I had a guy come this morning. He grabbed a whole case, right? And of course I'm going like, okay, well, whatever. I mean, they look pretty cool. Very much reminded me of the more detailed out Toybiz figures, like Planet of the Symbiotes, with a little bit of a Spawn twist to it. I believe it was the shading, just the more detailed elements that really stood out from previous Toybiz action figures of Spider-Man that I had in my collection. So, of course, I'm looking at the figures. I think I picked up Toad. I think that was the first one I picked up, and flipped it over, looking at it, going, wow, this is really interesting, right? It's a big, heavy packaging. Again, the packaging reminded me of Spawn figures as well. You get a lot in the box, but this was different. I just remember the big old clamshell. It was really sharp on the sides, which, if you've ever cut yourself on a Marvel Legends figure back in the day, you know what I'm talking about there. But there was just something different. There was a lot going on in the packaging. Now, I do have my old, Series 6 Wolverine pack-ins. I still have that for some reason. But they had a lot of cross-sells. It was very much utilizing Marvel Comics, Ultimate Spider-Man, get a free subscription issue, and you got a really cool Marvel Legends bio on the back, which said, when the shadow of evil falls across the land, the world's greatest champions strike for justice. Spider-Man, X-Men, Thor, Iron Man, Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, Captain Marvel, Hulk, everybody under the Marvel sun for over 60 years, fans of all ages, have been shouting, make mine Marvel. So that was my introduction, going, wow, okay, this is really cool, it's interesting. And not only that, but you get the really cool cross-sells on the back, which, of course, everyone remembers to this day. And they had the proof of purchase and the Toybiz worldwide customer service number, right? And then it also came with a comic book. And that was very cool as well. Just remember that. They always had the big not for resale on it. On the backside, they'd flip it over. Of course, more and more cross-sells. Always with the cross-sells. So, of course, you're probably thinking how you grabbed them all, right? Checked out. Nope. Didn't take a single one home. These were new. This is like, oh man. And they're $6.99 a piece, which was so expensive back in the day. If only, right? Nowadays. But yeah, it was just one of those things that put them all back. Now, I went home, thought about them for a while, and enjoyed Spawn for a long while after that, to be quite honest with you. And here and there, as we'll kind of go through each of the figures, yeah, I did pick them up eventually. But to be quite honest, it wasn't really until they got to the Build-A-Figures where I was like fully into Marvel Legends. I was like, oof, that's an interesting marketing gimmick right there, right? But of course, it's a story for another day. But in other case, this is going to be an absolute retro shiz blast from the past. Sit back, relax, grab yourself a nice hot cup of coffee. This is a look all the way back until 2002. Marvel Legends Series 1, the originals, Captain America, Hulk, Iron Man, and Toad by Toybiz. Now, I'm sure you'll probably hear me throughout this video say over and over, it's crazy to me to think about how much has changed in 20 years just for Marvel itself. with all the different comics iterations. Now, with all the different movies, the Disney Plus shows, Captain America is an official household name now, whereas back in the day, no, things were just getting started with everything with the most mainstream pop culture, and these Marvel Legends figures really did help them along. With Captain America's base right here, he came with a paper flag basically on a flagpole. It's a rather large sticker. Mine still has a little bit of adhesive to it. It still stays on. We're good, right? I mean, I'm amazed that it's lasted this long, but a couple creases here and there, waves to and fro. The bases for the Marvel Legends figures were always top-notch quality. Just to have a row of these figures was amazing. All the mortar shells, the busted tank, all the bullet holes, everything was detailed to the nines on these. The brickwork, the busted, broken out window of where a bomb dropped and blew the whole place up. It was there. It just looked so good. And it's unmatched to this day. You had the little hole in the back, push pin hole, nail hole. You could put this on the wall if you wanted. 2002 Marvel. And of course, yeah, you had Captain America himself, which, of course, sculpted by famous Toybiz sculptor Phil Ramirez. Did a fantastic job. Really nice shield. Overly sized shield. Definitely did like that. And he had a clip and then two basically ropes on the back that you could slide the figure's hand through. Definitely like that. You could utilize it for a couple different things, like putting it on his back, which I'll show you in just a second. But really nicely detailed. Go careful with the clip. It still makes me nervous to this day, especially on Marvel Legend figures now. I had one break recent years, right? But nothing looks better than having it on his back or on his arm with those straps. Captain America himself, he can do the shimmy shake now. He's got a little bit loose over the years, right? He's pretty spry for an old guy, right? Really nice articulation for back in the day. This is what was exciting. This was new. This is what led to Marvel Legends being what they are today. Bicep swivel, double jointed elbows. He spun at the forearm. He had some articulation in the hands, not every single digit move. It was basically all the fingers together. And just to point this out right here, I never painted anything, don't remember painting anything, but a lot of excess white paint right there in the pin joints on his arms where the white meets the red and the blue and everything else. So it always looked a little bit different to me. They could have done a little bit better job in that sense. He had a little bit of a ab crunch to him. Very tiny waist, right? We can all agree on that. The legs, they worked. They had some thigh swivel, right? Some of the joints are stuck after all these years, but double jointed knees, those are looking pretty good. He had toe. He had some feet, rock, kind of, sort of. The boots would spin. So fairly decent articulation for a 2002 action figure. But now, of course, what you want to do is you want to pose this guy out. So you get his shield, and you make sure it's nice and snug right there on either arm. Go for each one. You get your really fancy base. You get the flagpole, and bingo bango. That was so cool. It still holds up to this day. I don't care what anybody says. I know the arm's a little bit long. I know he's got certain gorilla proportions. We're not to Iron Man yet. But hot dang, does that look good, especially with the flag, and he's crushing the tank, and there's bullet holes, and you could look at him through the window, you know, hey, Captain America, what are you doing out there fighting the Nazis in World War II? You can have him holding the flag if you wanted to go that route. The hands, they were not the most naturalistic, we'll agree. But in terms of the Marvel Legends Captain America figures we're getting now, one of the most recent Captain Americas, to see what came before and to see what we're getting now. Without these original figures, we wouldn't have never gotten to this point. This was the starting base, even before Marvel Legends, with all those figures coming out. But the Marvel Legends line really kicked off that attention to articulation, Build-A-Figure, all that jazz. But to have these two next to each other, swapping out shields if you wanted to go that route, just amazing to see. And really, at the end of the day, just a gorgeous piece to have in your Marvel Legends collection. Now, I know what you're all thinking. Well, wait a minute. You have Captain America. I know Iron Man's coming up. I know Hulk's coming up. You got like an Avengers bad guy or something? No. We got a figure that was primarily meant to be a figure for a X-Men movie, something to that degree, and it never came to fruition. So let's throw it in the Marvel Legends line, Series 1. Why not, right? And of course, I'm talking about the famous X-Men baddie, the Brotherhood of Evil's very own Toad. And that was one of the figures where I promise you this, that I went, wait a minute, why is Toad in this? And of course, picking him up and going like, okay, why, of all the bad guys, why is it Toad? Well, it makes for a good story, right? At the end of the day, Toad comes with single-handedly the greatest base ever put to an action figure, right? This thing is immense. It's like a large subsection of just water and land, and again, everything is sculpted out to the nines. You got water snakes. You've got like a Ninja Turtle kind of thing right here where it's like a smashed snake, right? You got a little greenery sticking out right here that was rubber, and then you got this rock and the ground, everything. I mean, they really put a lot of detail. You got this big old footprint right here. The grass is all matted down. The bottom, 2001, so a little bit before the 2002 bases that were produced. But in either case, I mean, it's just amazing. The water comes off, right? So if you didn't want the water, you just want to see everything under the water, well, there you go. Look at all this. You got human skulls, you got human hands, you got trees that are broken apart, the stumps and the rocks, and little crustaceans, little sea life every which way, a turtle. It's so overly sculpted, but it's so beautiful at the same time. They did a fantastic job with this. And just to be able to have two displayable options, right? Land or put the water back on, clips right into there. And yeah, oh yeah, there's a figure with this as well, right? The base was basically the best thing about Toad. Now, don't get me wrong. Toad is a great looking action figure. He's really well sculpted, well detailed. But in terms of fitting with the other more points of articulation, Hulk, Iron Man, Captain America, yeah, Toad is more of that simplified, older Toybiz look. But, I mean, the paint is still there. He's very cool. He's very interesting looking. And again, of course, a gorgeous sculpt by Phil Ramirez. The articulation left you a little bit desired, right? I mean, he would have more articulation in the shoulders, if anything, kind of sort of the wrist, kind of sort of one arm at the elbow where they would just swivel. Nothing really to go bragging about. But the toad in his hand, why not, right? A toad holding a toad, a very detailed, very nicely painted toad. It's stuck in there. It's not coming out. I've seen ones that people have taken him out of his hand, but no, not for me. You can't break up the sculpt. It's perfect just the way it is. But all the detail, the costume, the way the material folds. He had a little bit of a swivel in his big old gut waist right there, and then his more circusy outfit. It's all tattered. It's all dirty and everything. The boots, very cool, very Green Goblin-like boots. 2001, in case you were wondering. But just a very cool, now, very pre-posed action figure. Don't get me wrong. He's in that more Playmates Ninja Turtle stance of the 80s, right? But putting him on the base, yeah, he looks fantastic. And like I said, you have this really cool Captain America. Now you got this really cool Toad figure with the base. The base really brings Toad home on this one, let's be honest. I used to put the Iron Man mask in there. I thought that was pretty cool. I still do to this day. You put it over the skull if you wanted to do that. But you got Toad just, maybe he's out in the wilderness yelling. Maybe he sees a Wolverine or two. So nothing really to compare Toad with. But if anything, here is one of the more recent Wolverine action figures from modern Marvel Legends. And more or less, they go okay, but you can kind of see the details of the more hand sculpted as opposed to sculpted now in a computer, which doesn't really detract. But sometimes I'll admit I miss that more human element where you can see they're doing it all by hand. They're really going to town. Because Toad, even though he's very obscure and a very odd choice, he's one heck of an action figure. Now, of course, continuing on with Wave 1, we have the Jolly Green Angry Giant himself. Don't make him angry. You wouldn't like him when he's angry. And that's what I mean. 20 years later, the Incredible Hulk has become a household name. Everyone has a pair of those punching Hulk mittens, right? That you can go around and bash and crash your friends with. But the Incredible Hulk, you can say that now in Jeff Goldblum's voice, and yeah, pretty much everyone would know what you're talking about. The base, really cool, broken up, all these different stones just wrecked by the Hulk, punched right through it, all the metal rebar sticking out. Each of the stones has little intricate marks to it, sculpted to the nines. Very, very cool. The actual base itself, the part on the ground, a little bit too tiny for Hulk's feet. 2002 right there on the bottom of the base. And of course, yeah, you can do the whole push pins thing. In case you were wondering, yeah, I've been known to do this back in the day. You put little push pins, you can get a nail, something or other, whatever would fit, and then you put it up against the wall so that it doesn't fall forward. I know, right? Ingenious. And it was malleable. You could work with you and flexible and such if you wanted to use it with Hulk. Once again, sculpted by Phil Ramirez. I actually really do like the head portrait on this guy. It's a Hulk portrait that we would not get in this day and age. He's very angry, and I like to see that in my Hulk action figures. The articulation was a bit all over the place on this one, to be quite honest with you. While he does have an amazing sculpt to him, the pants are all ripped. Very nice purple pants, right? Of course, you got to have that for the Hulk. The musculature was very well done. You can see all the different veins. I like the wash on the Hulk. When it comes to the hands, now this was the version where he's supposed to have bendy wire sort of hands, and you never could do it, right? This was a figure that, oddly enough, sitting in high school, sitting in Mr. Roby's friend of mine, right, gave this to me because he got the articulated hands and didn't want this anymore, and I've loved it ever since, right? You can see what I'm talking about here. The articulation nowadays would go like, wow, that's a really gappy. It's doing the amazing Yamaguchi thing, right? You could stick your fingers through the musculature in his back. But you could get a lot of different poses out of this guy, and, well, that was part of the fun back in the day before the internet and complaining and all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm talking about? But the waist would move fairly well. He had some semblance of an ab crunch, I would say. Not really, but he could kick his legs out. He did have a semblance of a thigh swivel, right? At least on this side. The other side not wanting to budge. He's got single jointed knees, and then he has a bit of a rock to his feet, and they'll go up and down. Big clodhopper feet really did help him stand, and you get him into lots of crazy Hulk poses with his arms stretched out. Now, I really do think that the bendy wire fingers, well, they could have worked a whole heck of a lot better, but in this sense, you could, well, clap your villains to death, right? Right on the head. And as I said, the feet are a little bit too big for putting him directly on it. It's always 1 foot down or crashing Iron Man through the base itself. Some extra rocks, some busted up pipes, something like that to put on the ground would have been really cool, but just in the sense of an old-fashioned 2002 Hulk, yeah, he's pretty cool. When you compare him to the Hulks of nowadays, right? Well, they still have some problems, some issues here and there. Hey, at least nipple technology has improved, right? Or has it? I don't know. Yeah, it's just weird to have Hulk nipples. But yeah, you can have the old base paired with this new age Hulk, and it actually looks really good. I like the greens a whole heck of a lot on the newer figures. However, the old one has its charm. It does have its open, clappy hands, and to be quite honest with you, you wouldn't have this new Hulk if it weren't for the old ones. Which finally does bring us to the last figure of Wave 1. Now, I know that there are some variants, right, to these figures, and there was some comic book packaging variants, and there's a Walmart variant, but there was 4 core characters in the first wave, and that's why we're sticking with the 4. And the Invincible Iron Man is no difference. This is a great looking action figure sculpted by Dave Cortez. He comes with a rather interesting base. Now, growing up and having this figure, I always thought that this was like a reduced looking building of Tony Stark's building, and it's just meant to be a stand, if anything, right? Well, I guess it's like a space base or something to that degree. Really nicely detailed, of course, on the bottom, 2002 right there, and you get to see all the machine parts, and it does look really nice. And it's a nice, interesting machine type backdrop for a Iron Man such as this one, and it simply just pegs in right there. You got the Stark logo in the back, and it's off to the side, just crooked just a tiny bit, gives it that little comic book flair, and it goes perfectly with this Iron Man. I still love the look of this Iron Man. Yes, I know he's got those big old ball gorilla shoulders, but I still think he's just one of the coolest Iron Man figures. I really like everything that he does, the way he stands. He's clunky. He's clunky like the old comic books of Iron Man. And the best part was you could take off the faceplate and you saw old Tony Stark with that mustache right there. They don't really do that anymore. It's all swapping heads and hands these days, right? When just back in the day, you could just take the faceplate off. But you get what I mean. It's just old-fashioned in a great way. He had some articulation in the neck. It would rock to and fro, up and down. Just be careful with the neck. I've seen a lot of people with probs in that sense. Same thing with the Hulk, right? The shoulders would come out all that way, and it wouldn't look the best. You can get in there, see the screws and everything else that hold this figure together. But, yeah, it's. Yeah, I got nothing in that sense. But still, I'm sticking to it. I do like this figure. And you could put his hands out to do the whole repulsor blast thing, or how some of you may say, oh yeah, in the first Iron Man movie when he shoots the rocket off and walks away and all cool like as it explodes. He's got some finger articulation all the same right there. And then you got some waist, which, yeah, kind of sort of ab crunched. Mostly just kind of spun, right? We'll just say that. The legs would kick out. Not really much of a hindrance. He'd kick more out than he'd kick off to the side. He had thigh swivel as well. Double jointed knees, double jointed elbows, which worked really cool. He did have some articulation in the boot as well. Always like that. Very seamless in that sense. Toe articulation, feet articulation that would rock to and fro. So very cool. And again, the sculpt of Iron Man, just the hand sculpted look to this guy is still why it's one of the coolest Iron Mans that really kicked off the entire Marvel Legends line. And when you have him on the stand, getting ready to take off, maybe fire off a few rockets, a blast or something to that degree, yeah, he does look good standing there doing his whole rocket blast pose. Now, this was back in the day, so not a whole heck of a lot of accessories minus the bases for all these figures. Cap got his shield. No blast effects for Iron Man. That's something they definitely do these days. Sometimes more than they should, or just reusing them. But again, I always really liked taking off the faceplate. In fact, I'd have him just posed off holding the faceplate itself. I always thought that was really cool looking. But when you pair him up with a more modern Marvel Legends figure, yeah, you can see the difference. Now, this one, the new one, is more of a gold look than just the traditional yellow, but you get the idea. Same costume. Unmasked or masked? Well, you decide. If you want just a head portrait, sure, the new ones are great, but if you just want a faceplate, why not? But putting the base with this new Iron Man, that still looks good. It's funny how well the bases, if anything, really hold up with these new figures. And when you have them together, after all these years, as I've said with all the other figures we've looked at, it's still awesome to see side by side. So that's going to wrap it up for my look back at the 2002 Marvel Legends Toybiz Series 1 action figure line. There is a lot of memories for these figures, from initially walking into a Toys R Us and seeing these on the shelves and going, you know what? Nah, I got my other Spider-Man figures and I've got a Cap and a Hulk here and there. I'm good. But as time went on, as my tastes change and you start seeing them more and more on the shelf, yeah, you did what any collector does. You just got into them, especially when they went into the Build-A-Figures and everything else. And look where we are 20 years later. I can't even believe it. We got the 20-year anniversary line of Cap and Hulk and Iron Man, and I'm sure there's going to be a Toad revealed eventually. Who knows? No, he's coming. We know he's coming. But in all honesty, 20 years, that's a long time. And I'll tell you this, as a collector who's been there from the beginning of Marvel Legends, now seeing it, there's plenty of time to collect. In 20 years, I see how much has changed, how much my life has changed, how much Marvel itself, how people perceive comic books. It's amazing. It's so much fun, and it's always a blast to be a part of this, to be talking about these action figures now. But in all honesty, yeah, it's a lot of fun to really look back now and go, wow, there's been so many changes. But I'll tell you this, get everything together now. Go to school, make your money, get a house, find that special someone, worry about collecting second, third, fourth. Don't put all your time, don't put all your energy into collecting this madness. Have a fantastic life. Get everything together so that later you have a beautiful collection room where you can display everything. And in 20 years from now, who knows what kind of figures, if there will be action figures still left on the shelves. Fingers crossed, right? But rest assured, these old ones will always be there, and they'll be there 20 years from now as well. But as always, I am curious to know what you guys think about all these Wave 1 action figures. Did you have them? Do you need to get them now? Comment below, let me know. Let's talk everything Marvel Legends Series 1. And to everyone at Toybiz who put the time and the effort and the creativity and the insanity into making all this happen now, 20 years later, thank you so much. The memories are priceless, and the action figures, well, good or bad, they're still an amazing display for your shelf. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. As always, drink some great coffee, eat some great food, but most importantly, remember, get it all together. And then when you're ready, get to collecting. And when you do, let me know what you found. I'll talk to you guys soon. Adios.